Erica. It's good to catch up with this new live album and your kind of creative magic together. So thank you for taking a minute out today.
Oh, we'd love to. We'd love to talk about what we're doing and everything. We
Well,
love to
then we're
meet.
we're in the right place. Then let's start with this. 6 years ago, especially now looking at March 11th, I'm starting to get like that vertigo from 6 years ago. The world closed down, coronavirus happened, melted everything
Oh,
away from musicians. How did you make it through that era, and how has it influenced the way that you create and do things today?
I'm trying to think what we were doing. We didn't do gigs. I guess we were like in the same boat with everybody, just not knowing. You know what I did though is I picked up the guitar and I started learning how to play the guitar. So that was a good thing.
Yeah,
You don't have anything else to do, so you just start playing.
yeah. Idle hands, you know what they say. So,
How about for you?
Well, things slowed down as far as Karen and my band, that we co-lead LehCats. For LehCats, it was a little slower. I was still accepting work as a sideman, and I was doing work for different people, corporate things and recordings. There was more recordings in a way during that time because people could sit at home with their home recording studios and write and produce things. So I was doing a fair amount of arranging work for a film composer, and I was arranging strings. I was arranging uh, horn section stuff and then overdubbing the parts and hiring other string players and horn players to play the parts that I wrote out for the arrangements. So that was going on, from home. And I was still going out and doing some corporate gigs and uh, some different things.
Really, with COVID?
Yeah, I was. I was still doing it, but not that much,
yeah,
because people were backing out. But you know, there was amount of music income for hire kind of stuff.
yeah.
Mm.
But wearing a mask, it's kind of hard to play saxophone with a mask on.
Yeah, it's hard to do a lot of that. I get it. So live at the break room, I'm curious. I know we're kind of out of the whole COVID realm, but there was this thirst for live entertainment, live recordings. I know I was thinking about it much more and listening to it. Was there any thought of you making this live album because of what we came out of, or did it just happen that it was live at the break room and that's where we're at in 2026?
It was just one of two gigs that we had in the Bay Area at that time during that time that we went out there, and they just so happened to multi-track record it, and they just so happened to have a live film crew there also, and with no editing possible because they did everything on the fly without rehearsing or anything. They just did it. So sometimes when the piano player would be soloing, they would show my foot, or sometimes when the drummer was not playing, they would show him. I mean, they just like it's all right. It's
Yeah.
spur of the moment, and there's some interesting things that happened. But musically, it was a good night with Giovanni playing with us, and who's great. He's so musical, and it was captured and on multi-track, which made it much easier to mix and master than something when you have to trust whoever is doing the sound for it to be balanced, which it wasn't as good as it could have been. But I'm a pretty good engineer, home audio engineer, and I got it sounding really good the way to represent us
Yeah.
correctly.
So let me ask you this. How did you two come together as a musical unit? How did this start? How has it evolved to where we're at today?
Um, well, I had my own band. We are both from the Bay Area, and I
San
used to
Francisco Bay Area.
Yeah.
and I used to have my own band. We were playing a lot of clubs in the Bay Area. And then he came to one of my gigs at one of these clubs, and I said, "Who is that guy out there?" And he knew my pianist. So the pianist introduced us, and his pickup line was, "Would you like to see my flute?" It's like, yeah, I would love to see your flute.
I had a fancy flute
That's the
in
best line yet.
Yeah.
in the
I became
trunk.
a flute player, yeah.
I used to carry my instruments in the trunk of my car, which had
Yeah,
a huge trunk. I had a Chrysler 300, I think, at that time.
yeah,
and and like a dummy, I'd carry my instruments. I learned my lesson. They were stolen at one point out of the trunk, but I still carried my instruments in the car,
yeah,
and I went to show her my $6,000 handmade sterling silver uh Powell flute.
yeah. That's
And
awesome.
She
I
was
was in awe
impressed.
of that flute, yeah.
That's great.
And we became friends after that and just played duets and stuff like flute players do. And it just grew from there and got married and
I played bass in her band, electric bass.
Okay, okay. So
Um,
very multifaceted. You know, I was thinking about the Bay Area. My favorite jazz stations out there, KCSM. I listen to it all the time. I always have radio going in a room, and it's so yeah, it's good. So my question to you is this: how did you realize? How long did it take for you to realize that you musically gelled together? That this was going to be a fruitful union? Because it's one thing when you have a relationship, and they always talk about work and personal lives and how those things can intermingle, and it's like almost like meeting your hero sometimes. It can be a bad thing. How did you realize that you were going to hop over this hurdle and interweave your entire existence together?
well, it was a hurdle, okay, being because it took us a long time to get to where we can even play together. Because flute players are notoriously very competitive.
Okay.
And to be with another flute player, it's like, yeah, yeah. But it worked out, and we just, it was like we had to work through a lot of stuff to be able to play together. I mean, his resume is very impressive, and his and his musicianship is very, it's off the charts. It's like, wow, okay. And then if he would criticize me, it's like, wait a minute, I hear you, but got to say it in a certain way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
so for years we didn't decide to collaborate on a family band together. Mainly because Karen was proposed the idea many times, and I was apprehensive because I was used to, and I was propped up on a pedestal for a long time playing with really famous people, and I was a sideman for hire by famous people, and I was used to that, and I figured that I only wanted to do big big things, and big time things with big name people for big money and all that kind of thing. And I was also kind of not confident of doing my own music. Karen and I co-write together. Karen writes her own songs, I write my own. And I was not I didn't have the I had the drive but not the confidence to want to put out creative original music into the world for the possibility that it wouldn't be well received, or it would just be okay or mediocre at best. And but in the same time, I thought, well, I have the special stuff and it's very special to me, but I don't want to take the chance of it being rejected. And then years later, a friend of mine who's a drummer who's from the East Coast but lived in the Bay Area for a short time and played with some of the same bands that I played with. We met when I was playing bass with a nylon string gypsy style, like Gypsy Kings guitar duo that were sort of like Struns and Farah, that kind of sound. They mixed Latin and flamenco with jazz, with easygoing kind of jazz, smooth jazz of sorts, but with the flamenco and Spanish uh, kind of guitar playing. And I did a few gigs, and me and the drummer just clicked. His name is Daniel Gonzalez. He lives in the Poconos now, but he's originally from the Bronx, and we just had a vibe. You know, we were as friends and as the way we played. Years later, he reached out to me on Facebook and said, "Hey, Norbert, remember me? Um, you played bass and I played drums with you with that band with Carlos Godinez and I can't remember the other guitar player's name. The name of the band was Passion and Grace. They put out a couple of records, but I said, sure. He says, let's start a band. Let's do something. You have your own music, right? I said, yeah, yeah, let's do something. Let's do some jazzy, fusiony, Latin kind of stuff or something. So we got together and we did it. He was really enthusiastic about it, and he provided the drive and the inspiration and the push for us to put something together. And so it combined, the discussion that Karen and I always had that I was apprehensive about doing this husband wife led band combined with Dan, and it just took off from there. It worked, and we said, okay, we can do this. Here's our platform, um, and we just need to get a bass player and a pianist or a guitarist, and maybe a percussionist, and that was it.
So let me ask you this. It's a live album that you just put out. You know, we all have had these seminal experiences with live music. What was the first live show, jazz show or otherwise, that you saw that left a huge mark on you, that made you either love live performance or want to be a musician?
In my case, or do you want to?
No, go ahead.
In my case, there's several. When I was still in high school, um, the Maynard Ferguson band, our school band director is a jazz saxophone player named Alan Close.
Hmm.
And he was I would say he was my second teacher. I had a private teacher just before him, who was a country and western multi-instrumentalist that played saxophone well. Um, he was from Tennessee. I think he was from Nashville, and he moved back. But country and western was his real thing. But he was into Boots Randolph, and he introduced me to that.
Yeah.
Then Alan Close, my high school teacher, uh, brought the kids from the school. He was so proactive, and he would introduce music to everybody. He really encouraged it. And he brought me to a Maynard Ferguson big band concert when I was in high school, and I was blown away. And by the way, people soloed and played together as a unit. And Alan Close, my high school music teacher, he would bring jazz records to the class, the school. He took me under his wing as a saxophone player because he saw that I had a spark and an interest in it. And he kind of guided me how to do this and how to do that. He taught about harmony, he taught about the feeling of the rhythm, of all, the different kinds of rhythm in jazz music, as opposed to some other kinds of music. Um, and then while I was in high school, I used to go to the Keystone Corner,
Hmm.
and I used to hang outside the door because I was a minor, but I had my little facial hair going on and stuff, and I started going gray prematurely, so I could sometimes sneak in and pretend I'm older than I am. And I saw so many some got recorded with Dexter Gordon. I saw Miles Davis play
Wow.
there. I saw Freddie Hubbard many times when Freddie was really playing. Um, I saw Illinois Jacquet. I saw Johnny Griffin.
Wow.
I saw, my idols playing from the jazz world. But I'm not just exclusively into jazz.
Yeah.
While I was in high school, I went to see Tower of Power play
Yeah.
because Alan Close, my high school teacher, brought records that he thought the young kids could relate to that weren't just fuddy-duddy jazz for old people. You know, he brought Tower of Power, which kids could relate to more because it had rhythm, it had R&B, it had funk, it had singing, it had soul in it. Uh, not to say that jazz-oriented music doesn't have any of those attributes. Of course it does, but it might be above a young kid's ability to take in, unless they get more seasoned. So I went to see Tower of Power a few times, there was one big concert with Tower of Power at the Concord Pavilion, and I was blown away. Oh, that's a delivery. We
Don't
don't
worry
have to
about
we don't have to get that.
Yeah.
And then I also went to see Earth, Wind, and Fire at the
Oh.
Oakland Coliseum,
Hmm.
and that blew me away. And the whole show, the whole concept, the way the band was so unbelievably
it. We were
tight.
at the same concert.
We were at the same, but we didn't know each other,
Yeah.
and I was blown away. It was just so
That was an
incredible,
amazing concert.
and
Uh,
so these early influences when bands were really meant everything. The way bands played, the musicians played together, and the camaraderie and the feeling and the sound that's unquestionably incredible. Those days have changed a little bit now. People are playing for more um, look what I can do, show off mentality rather than let's work as a team. You
yeah.
know,
Yeah.
the overall mentality socially has changed, I think.
So there's an old LP store in Kansas City, and they have these things called a mystery box, and it's like $5 or $10, and you get a whole bunch of albums. I just recently got an early Maynard Ferguson album that was autographed, and the ticket stub from the show, which was in Kansas City, was taped to the front of it. It was wild.
Oh,
Wow.
Totally cool. But I've heard so many stories. Maynard has launched thousands of experiences for not only fans, but for musicians. The prolific nature of his ability to tell stories and to put those memories in everybody's heads was just paramount. It was huge. Um, so how about you, Karen? What was your first? Was there an indelible first experience?
you know, my parents military and they were very, very strict, so I couldn't go see things too much. The first live concert I enjoyed watching live concerts on TV. But the first live concert I went to was Sly and the Family Stone.
Oh wow.
And oh, he was 2 hours late, but it was worth it. But so yeah, I've always been drawn to live performances. There's something magical about it, and I always wanted to do that. Just I, it's so inspiring to watch people playing on stage, and they give you this inspiration just playing and seeing how they're in interacting with each other and the audience.
So I feel like when I have a couple on here and I'm interviewing them that I need a big blue cue card and a really tall microphone, like the Newlywed Game. And what I want to ask you is this, as succinctly as you can, what is the most surprising thing that you've discovered about each other by working together as musicians? Other than being a couple, but being in that working element, what is the best or most surprising part of working together?
I it the best part is I know that he's got my back musically. I don't have to I most of the time I don't have to think about yeah, yeah, what's gonna happen. He's got it. That's the best part. That's why I feel good working with him on in a band. He's not gonna leave me hanging and stuff like that.
Yeah.
For me, the thing that comes to mind initially is when Karen and I, either one of us is creating a song, we help each other, and sometimes egos can get in the way, and it's hard to hear criticism. But ultimately, if I write a song and I have an A section, a B section, a C section, maybe a D section, uh, you know, somebody who creates something, they get used to it in their mind and they're hearing it a certain way, and they can get thrown off if someone bounces off it and says, that could be better if you flipped the D and the E section, or you flip the A with the C section, or don't repeat it so many times, or repeat that section more and make that your main theme and make the other part the verse or whatever. And Karen has an uncanny ability at that. And uh, sometimes at first I'm like, no, what do you, no, I know what it's supposed to be. It's already in my head. I know it. That's what I want. But then after she leaves the room and after I feel like she destroyed it in my mind, then I'll mess with it. Okay, I'll let me try what she said.
It's really like
And it
it's
works.
really like pulling teeth. I hear it a certain way and he's like, nah. And then he'll go back and say, okay, it's right.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, you've been doing this for a while, making music separately and together. What do you look forward to? What do you like the best about being a musician? What gets you up every day to create music?
For me, it's like I feel like I'm always learning, growing, and how to do things. I used to worry about every single note. I let that go. And I used to want to compare myself to all these other flute players, and that's not me anymore. This is me. Take it or leave it.
Hmm.
That's how it is. So I'm learning how to enjoy being on stage and just giving what I have to the audience.
Yeah. How about you?
For me, it's kind of like maybe if I compared myself to someone that they were given a supply of all these different spices and different substances to cook, different kinds of pastas, different kinds of, we're vegan, so I won't say meats, but different vegetables and plant-based, whatever. And and they know how to put it together to make people smile and feel better. I kind of feel like if I don't do that, I'm I'm just breathing and existing. I'm not really living.
Yeah.
So I have to put music together that can somehow be beneficial for people's ears, somehow. And I have to put it out there.
Absolutely. So, if anybody wants to get their hands on a copy of Live at the Break Room, I know it's streaming, but if anybody wants to download or get a copy or anything else going on in your world, I don't know if you're performing or doing any live shows as the warm months come up, any of the good business, where do people go?
Right to our website, LehCats.com.
Okay.
It has all the information there. You can buy the CD, you can download it, and all of the gigs that we're doing is up to date, even though we don't have any gigs right now. But
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
Some
Excellent.
things in the works.
Okay. Well, they know where to go now, so I will put the link in the show notes. This has been wonderful. Thank you so much for opening up. I'm looking forward to profiling it on the show. Best of luck with it. I appreciate it.
thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Good
Yeah.
to meet you.
Good to
Yeah.
meet you. And
Neon Jazz.